a Saudi businessman, the most famous arms dealer of the 70s, and the richest Arab man with a fortune estimated at $40 billion. His name was known among many Arab and foreign leaders. He owned the biggest yacht in the world and a private plane that could easily be called a flying palace. The story of this man's life is crazy in every sense of the word. He lived in extreme luxury and wealth, but the end was tragic. Imagine reaching a point where you don't even have money to buy a ticket to go back to your country. If you want to know the crazy details, make sure you watch the whole video. Stay tuned and enjoy the video. Peace. Today's story is about Adnan Khashoggi, the most famous arms dealer in Arab history. In a previous video, we talked about the Syrian arms dealer Mundhir al-Qasr and how he got caught by the FBI after they sent an Arab spy to his palace. That story was exciting and full of details you don't want to miss. But if we compare Mundhir to Adnan, Mundhir is just a drop in the ocean compared to Adnan, literally just a drop in his sea. Now, let's get to know Adnan Khashoggi. He was born on July 25, 1935, in Mecca. His father, Mohammed Khashoggi, was of Turkish origin. Adnan's dad was Saudi Arabia's Minister of Health and also the personal doctor to the kingdom's founder, King Abdulaziz bin Saud. May God have mercy on him. He comes from a well-known family. Adnan, maybe you've heard of him before, and among them is the famous journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who passed away in 2018, and also Samira Khashoggi, who was the ex-wife of the famous Egyptian billionaire Mohammed Al-Fayed, one of Egypt's most well-known arms dealers. Anyway, Adnan studied in Saudi Arabia, but then he moved to Alexandria, Egypt to finish his university studies. Suddenly, he decided to go to California to continue studying business. But after living in the US for about a year, he decided to quit school altogether and jump into the world of business and trade. I remember construction companies in Saudi Arabia were having trouble with their trucks. Because of her weakness in the desert, he thought of a plan to gather a decent amount of money from her. So, he made a deal with the American company Kerr North, which manufactures trucks. These trucks have wide wheels, making them perfect for the desert. He became the company's agent in Saudi Arabia, rented several trucks from them, and earned a commission of $250,000 from this work. Adnan continued working as a middleman between Western companies and Saudi Arabia. Whatever the kingdom needed, Adnan would handle it directly and take his commission, which could reach up to 15%. Of course, that was a respectable amount. But then, sometime in the 70s, Adnan decided to take it to the next level. The arms trade was way more profitable and risky, so he started working as a middleman between weapons manufacturers and the countries buying them. He made billions from arms deals and soon became known as one of the biggest and most notorious arms dealers in the world. One of his most famous deals was the Al Yamama deal, a weapon for oil trade between Saudi Arabia and Britain worth $20 billion. He was also involved in the arms deal between the US and Iran, which became known as the Iran-Contra affair. The goal of that deal was to help Iran in its war against Iraq. So why did Adnan sell arms to Iran? Isn't that supposed to be off-limits? He sold weapons to Iraq since it's an Arab country, which is fair enough. But for Adnan, that wasn't the main point. What mattered to him was whoever paid more. And since Iran was paying more, he sold weapons to them too. He sold weapons to anyone who paid more, whether they were an Arab country or a foreign one. Despite all the controversy and talk about his arms dealings, he was the richest Arab man in the world. Adnan's fortune in the 1980s was estimated at around $40 billion. And if you adjust that to today's value, it'd be 3 or 4 times that amount. In fact, in 1987, his picture was on the cover of Time magazine had the headline, "Shadow Arms Dealers: The Life of Adnan Khashoggi and His Astonishing Deals." Honestly, whenever newspapers want to give an example of wealth, the first name they mention is Adnan. He became famous mainly for his love of women and marriage. His first wife was English, named Sandra Daly. She converted to Islam and changed her name to Thuraya. They had 5 sons together, Muhammad, Khaled, Hussein, Omar, and 1 daughter named Nabila. But his marriage to Thuraya ended in 1974. Adnan's name got even more famous then because he paid $900 million as alimony to his ex-wife, which was the highest alimony ever paid in a divorce worldwide, at least as far as I know, still today. After that, he married a girl named Laura Bayan Kalaini, who was known as Lamia. She was 17 when they got married. They had a son together and named him Ali. Later, he married an Iranian woman named Shibari, but her last name is impossible to pronounce because it's really complicated. They divorced in 2015. These are just some of the women he officially married, but at the same time, Adnan was married to 12 women through temporary marriages. God bless you. Among them was the American fashion designer Jill Dodd. She said that Adnan offered her to be his wife for 5 years. What a life! So, since we talked about Adnan's biography and got to know, let's talk about Adnan's sources of income and what he owned. He had one of the biggest yachts in the world, measuring 866 meters long. The yacht had his daughter's name, Navila, written on it and even appeared in one of the James Bond movies. There were 610 cooks and servants on board, all working just for him. His private plane was like a moving palace. Everyone who flew on it was amazed by what they saw. He owned more than 12,000 properties, mostly in the US, and he had diamond mines in Utah. Mines, guys, real mines, not something for movies. And those mines were worth a fortune. He had billions of dollars and also owned shares in one of the top telecom companies in the US. Imagine, for his 50th birthday, he threw a party at his estate on the beach in Marbella, Spain. Over 400 people showed up, and the party cost millions of dollars. It was the most extravagant celebration since the one King Louis XIV of France threw when he took the throne. But the crazy part is, next to his estate, he dug a riverbed, and instead of filling it with water, he filled it with champagne. A flowing river of champagne. What's even more mind-blowing is that the estate was 5,000 acres. Something you can barely imagine. And if you wanted to walk from one end of the estate. Literally, the whole story is about Adnan, a man who lived a life of luxury in every way. USA Today wrote about him, saying Adnan's daily personal spending is $1 million. And that's just personal expenses, no investments or anything else. Since he became famous worldwide, whenever he travels from one country to another, the head of state comes out to welcome him. Like we said, he's built relationships with presidents, and sometimes countries have even borrowed money from him. It's said that once Turkey borrowed $20 million from him. He used to spend huge amounts on movie production. One time, it said he paid $150 million to develop foreign films. That I wish you'd spend your money on something that benefits you or benefits the Arabs. Adnan was the richest Arab man ever, nicknamed the Caravan of the Era by Arabs. His annual income was $500 million. One day, his daughter Navila told him she was craving ice cream and chocolate, but the type of ice cream she wanted was only made in France, and the chocolate was from Geneva. So, he sent one of his private jets to get them and come back. The trip took 7 hours, which honestly sounds crazy. Later on, Adnan was imprisoned in a Swiss jail because he was accused of laundering money for the husband of the former Filipino dictator. At the same time, he was fighting a legal battle against his deportation from the kingdom. He was lucky that the charges were dropped and he was cleared. But the weird thing is, while he was in this prison, he was getting fancy meals sent from the Iserhof Hotel and was basically living the life of the rich, even behind bars. On the other side of Adnan's life, he was obsessed with gambling. He gambled to an insane degree, and his favorite game was roulette. He played with huge amounts of money to guarantee wins and to impress the women around him. Believe it or not, one time he lost $500,000 in one go playing gambling. And this was back in the 70s, so if you adjust for inflation, that's a massive amount today. The amount was already $2 million or even much more, but Adnan didn't manage it right. Despite the huge wealth he had, he didn't take time into account, nor did he think about the hereafter, because he spent money on useless things like sugar, gambling, and insanely expensive parties. Slowly, Adnan's empire started to crumble. So, what caused the collapse on the western side? Specifically in 1984, there was an operation called Operation Moses, aimed at relocating African Jews to Israel. At that time, Adnan met with Sharon, the Israeli prime minister, an Israeli security official, and Sudan's leader back then, Jafar Nameri. Because of Adnan's friendship with Jafar, he told him that we wanted to help Jewish Africans get from Sudan to Israel. Of course, everything had its price, lots of money, and there was no problem with that. Everyone agreed, and the operation was a success. But later, Adnan gave an interview to an Israeli newspaper, claiming credit for helping relocate the Jewish community to Israel. At that time, he was very wealthy, basically untouchable. However, it seems that later on, problems arose between him, the US, and Israel. Rumor has it that certain parties targeted him using global connections to make him lose his assets. They accused him of fraud and manipulating shares in a telecommunications company. He was really overconfident, and on top of that, his wealth took a big hit because property values dropped in the US and Europe. He lost more than $500 million back then. Not long after, the diamond mines he owned in Utah sank, and people say it was no accident. The mine's losses were estimated at over $2 billion. On top of all that, at that time, Adnan was in London still gambling until he ran out of funds in London banks due to losses at bars. He ended up owing £8 million to the casino at the Reds Hotel. Also, during his financial troubles, the yacht was sold to the Sultan of Brunei, and then the Sultan sold it to Donald Trump, the former US president, for $29 million. Donald used it for 2 years before selling it to Al-Walid bin Talal. On the Arab side, the Iran-Iraq War started in the early 1980s. Like we said, since Adnan was an arms dealer and money was his main priority, he sold weapons to Iran, not out of love for Iran or hatred for Iraq, but based on who paid more. It's said that because Adnan supported Iran, Saudi Arabia stopped doing business with him and his company. Around the time, Saddam Hussein came out and said that our relationship with Saudi Arabia is bigger than Adnan. The stuff that's been said about Adnan Khashoggi is off. And I'm telling you, our relationship is way above the petty details some people are trying to throw into it. What made the West start backing off little by little is that the kingdom began sponsoring its students to study business abroad. During that time, a lot of people started getting into the same business Adnan was in, the trade between Western countries and the Gulf. And of course, we're not talking about arms trading here. That's when Adnan started facing competitors, and as his losses piled up, the spotlight on him began to fade, but the losses kept coming from every side. He ended up broke, literally had nothing left. He left Al Hudaydah and decided to travel to Saudi Arabia, but he didn't even have enough money for a ticket to get out of London and fly to Saudi. Imagine the guy who used to spend $1 million a day ended up not having enough cash for a ticket to go back home. At that time, he ran into a businessman in London who bought him a ticket and sent him to Jeddah Airport. When he arrived, he was in terrible shape. Believe it or not, he started asking people for money just to eat and drink, and his health began to decline. This is a picture of Adnan after he got to Saudi Arabia and his rich wife, whom he gave $900 million. Right now, she's working as a flower seller at a shop along with one of her kids. This is a photo of her on her way to work. And just to be clear, this isn't about gloating over anyone, may God bless us all, but the point is to learn a lesson. After the news of his bankruptcy spread, one of his old business friends came to him and said, "Adnan, I haven't forgotten the friendship we had. Honestly, I'm sending you a monthly salary from me so you can have something to eat and drink." One day, one of his wives asked him, "What's been the worst day of your life?" He told her, "One day, one of the workers who used to work for me came with some problems in his country. His family needed money, so the worker came to me and asked for a loan. He said he'd pay it back entirely from his salary. But I got mad at him, snapped, and fired him. I asked his wife why he acted like that, and he told her, 'I'm not responsible for Adam's kids,' meaning, basically, he doesn't care about anyone. She told him, 'The guy asked you for a loan and will pay you back over time.' But he said, 'I don't care why he didn't save money earlier.' After I fired the worker, he cursed me and told me to pray that before he dies, God shows me a day when I'll have to ask people for money. Then he said, 'You saw with your own eyes, I lost everything and I have no source of income left.' My friend who pays me my monthly salary came in. One month, I went to collect the salary I live off. When I arrived at my friend's palace, I waited in the lounge, but that day my friend wasn't there. So one of his workers came to give me the money while I was sitting in the lounge. Then the worker I had fired showed up trying to give me the money. After I kicked him out, he started working for my friend and told her, 'This is the worst day of my life.' I ended the day broke and the poorest in the entire Khashoggi family. Truly, nothing stays the same forever. After that, Adnan's health kept getting worse and worse. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which is also called shaking palsy, and he became unable to walk. After that, Saudi Arabia sent him to London for treatment. Through friendships with heads of state, top businessmen, and officials, he passed away alone in London in 2017 at the age of 81. He only had his children with him. And that's how our story ends. See you in the next video. Goodbye.